Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's happening, man? I hope you guys are doing great today. I know my day is going pretty good, man. So check this out. If you would, please join me in a moment of silence followed by serenity. Pray for the addict who still suffers and for those of us who are still bound down to some sort of struggle that keeps us from moving forward in this toxic life that we live in, man. So yeah, if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. All righty, well, let's get started. Now that we got that serenity prayer out of the way, let's get into this podcast. Let's get it started. So check this out, man. I wanted to talk to you guys about something today, and figured I'd do it out here in the out in the courtyard area, I guess, of the Buddhist temple that I go to, and is just to talk about a question somebody asked me. Somebody asked me a question the other day, and it just kind of, I was like, well, okay, well, maybe it's something that I got to talk to, or let people know in my videos about, because it's actually the foundation of the practice, right? And and it coincides and it kind of meshes really well with the recovery. You know what I'm saying? And it has, and the thing is, the thing that I'm talking about is called the Four Noble Truths, and that is the foundation of the Buddhist practice. You know what I'm saying? It's following the Four Noble Truths, and the Four Noble Truths is understanding that there's suffering. You know what I'm saying? Understanding that there's a cause of suffering. Understanding that there's a cessation of suffering. In other words, there's a craving to that suffering. And understanding that there's a way out of the suffering. And in this practice, it's through the Eightfold Path. And we'll get into that in another video probably, but for now we just want to focus on the Four Noble Truths and why I think it fits really well with recovery. You know what I'm saying? Because it's talking about suffering, number one, and everybody who is going through recovery or is in the midst of the addiction or in the midst of whatever it is that's keeping you bound down, whether it's addiction, whether it's depression, whether it's dealing with grief, whether it's dealing with mental thought process. Maybe you're one of those who have these suicidal thoughts like I had at one point in time in my life, or dealing with PTSDs and those sort of things. You know what I'm saying? And it's just dealing with trauma and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So that's dealing and living a life through suffering. And understanding that the suffering is always going to be there, okay? But knowing also that there is a cause and effect to the suffering. In other words, coming to the realization and understanding the fact that we, as human beings, are the cause of the suffering. In other words, we mentally bring things into our mindset that brings us to act a certain way. And whether that is through whatever it is that you've gone through, I know myself, I mean, I could, going through the trauma and stuff like that is when I was a kid and growing up in a family, with a family that had going up with an alcoholic and drug addict father, you know what I'm saying? That has it's got part of that living is due to why I was addicted or whatever the case is, right? And it could be in the part of this Four Noble Truths is to understand that, you know what I'm saying, and know that there's going to be suffering, but when you acknowledge the suffering and understand where it's coming from and understand how to live with it, is it goes into the third noble truth, which is the cessation of suffering. In other words, it's to somehow minimize the craving of whatever it is that we're doing. And the craving could be anything. It could be craving of any thing that you are wanting. You know what I'm saying? It could be joyful stuff. It could be bad stuff. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just craving in general. And when we crave, we suffer. And it's getting into that mindset of understanding that fine line. You know what I mean? And then understanding also that there is a way to minimize the craving, and that is through the Eightfold Path, which is a way of, basically, it's a mindset, it's a way of living, it's a way of thinking, and it's basically having to reformat and transition your mental thought process to a different type of mental thought process that doesn't involve all the suffering and minimizes the craving. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we're not going to be able to detach ourselves from the suffering all the way through, but we can minimize it a whole lot. And in recovery, that's what we do. You know what I'm saying? In recovery, that's the basis of working a recovery program, regardless if it's a 12-step program, a spiritual program, or in any part of recovery that you're trying to attain, whether it's addiction, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's trying to relieve yourself from grief or depression or PTSDs, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? It works for it all. And that's one of the things that I like, that is what drew me to the practice, because I could relate the practice to the program. You know what I mean? To a recovery program, in the things that I've learned in many different rooms, whether it's AA, NA, or peer support groups, whatever, right? And I go to quite a few of them, and I don't just seclude myself to one practice. I go to different rooms to practice different ways to attain different things from different people, because ultimately the way to purify one's mind is through wisdom. And the more you pour good and spiritual karmic wisdom into your mental thought process, the more you purify the one that you have. You know what I mean? It's like the old pouring water into a pail of muddy water. You know what I'm saying? At first, this is how we live our lives, through this delusion of we can't see. You know what I'm saying? Because everything is so cloudy with all these distorted things that are coming through our lives, whether it's trauma, whether it's addiction, whether it's dealing with a relationship, whatever the case is. You know what I mean? There's many layers to that hardened thinking that you have. And when you start clearing things out of the way and doing an inventory, a mental inventory really, and start putting, spiritual and good karmic wisdom and of different practices that work, you know what I mean? And different people who have gone through the things that you're going through, because ultimately that's where the wisdom comes from. It comes from someone else's mental thought process. And what better way to exercise a practice like that through a person who dealt with suffering, ultimately. You know what I'm saying? And the Buddha, in his story, is a person who gave up, renunciated everything that he had to figure out a way to end suffering for not only himself but for everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And that is the practice. And what he came up with in doing that starts with the Four Noble Truths. You know what I'm saying? And he understood, okay, well, you know what? There's there's going to be suffering. You know what I'm saying? And it starts with the three main parts of suffering, which is, it's birth, uh, it's birth and death, and oh gosh, I forgot the other one. I'm sorry, totally blew my mind. But anyway, it's by we're adopting this practice of with and following somebody who has dealt with suffering and figured out that there's a way to live with the suffering and minimize it. You know what I'm saying? Nowhere in this practice is it going to tell you that there's not going to be like any more suffering as you live in this world that we live in, because it's inevitable. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, the beautiful thing about that is that you get to understand the fact that suffering is of impermanence. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like everything else. You know what I mean? Nothing lasts forever. And if you adopt a way to live your life in the form of the Eightfold Path, which is just these 8 things that is a tool for you to use to set your mental thought process up for to deal with that suffering in a good way. You know what I mean? And when the Buddha taught that in that third noble truth, in the cessation of suffering, that in that part that he ultimately got into this mental thought process of enlightenment in turn there, which was he reached nirvana in that point, and then went on to the fourth, which was to stay here in this nirvana state, in this enlightened state, which you can do while you're here on earth still, is living through the Eightfold Path. You know what I'm saying? And which is really cool, man, that there's a practice out there, and it's not much. It's not. I don't really take it much as this religious thing, but it's this scientific method and practice that works to minimize suffering and minimize the suffering. When you do that, you're able to minimize the probability of you going back and repeating a cycle of addiction, or going back to a depression, or whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life. You know what I'm saying? Because the more you practice the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, the easier it becomes to deal with the suffering. And by no means is it going to alleviate or make the suffering disappear completely, but it will help you maneuver your life to live a good and spiritual and good karmic life that is connected to this divine energy. You know what I'm saying? And that's ultimately what we want to do. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody wants to live in this world of darkness, in this world of addiction, in this world of dealing with PTSDs or depressions or whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life, right? And it's just the way. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way that I personally practice in my life, and it's a way that works. You know what I'm saying? It works for me, and if it works for me, I like to share it with somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing. You know what I mean? I find it really a really good practice, man, and it's powerful to me. You know what I'm saying? And especially when you start getting yourself into these communities that are like-minded, you know what I'm saying, and want the same thing that you want, and are practicing these Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, you will find out in a real quick minute that you're dealing with people who are of good karmic energy and have a great heart. You know what I'm saying, and want to help, and want to show the love, and and want to help you alleviate the suffering in any way possible. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that attracted me to the practice, and without judgment. You know what I'm saying? And without, you know, just, I guess, kind of shoving something down your throat, if you will. You know what I mean? Because it happens, you know what I mean? And I'm not dogging any religion or sect or anything like that, because I believe that every religion has something good to offer. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, every religion has good people, with people who want to alleviate suffering of some sort. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wakes up wanting something bad to happen to somebody. I just don't believe that. You know what I mean? I believe that every religion wants to help, you know, their fellow man. You know what I mean? And wants to spread this you know, energy of good faith. You know what I'm saying? And of good karmic energy. You know what I mean? That'll help you and me to get to this, you know, divine energy. You know what I'm saying? That is out there. And it's just one of the ways. You know what I'm saying? But it's cool, you know what I mean? And I figured I'd come out here and talk a little bit about the Four Noble Truths for those of you who may not know what it is. You know what I mean? And you can look it up, man. You know what I mean? It doesn't hurt to look it up and just to kind of research a little bit and understand it in a sense of helping somebody, including yourself. Number one, yourself first. You know what I mean? Because you can't do anything unless you help yourself first. That's number one. You have to be open-minded, willing, and truthful to new practices and wanting to help you get rid of whatever it is that you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? And I just find that this path for me has been a good one, and I'll continue to practice it and continue to share it. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the way I feel about it. And it doesn't mean that I don't believe in any other religions or anything like that, because I do. You know what I mean? Because they're real. You know what I'm saying? They're real, and I believe that they're real, and I believe that they're out there to, you know, reach somebody and bring them to the divine energy. You know what I'm saying? But it's just one of the ways. You know what I mean? And this right here is the way that this path is one that really connected with me, and that I really, you know, I really gravitated towards it. You know what I mean? And it's just a weird deal, but I felt like I've been here before, in a sense. You know what I mean? With the abilities that I have, that I've had since I was a kid. You know, with connecting to entities and energies and that sort of things. I've been able to do that since I was a really, really young man, and really young kid, actually. And I just didn't know what it was. You know what I'm saying? But I'm coming to find out that, you know, it's a good spiritual practice, man. And I feel like this is just where I'm supposed to be right now. You know what I mean? And this is what I like sharing it. You know what I mean? And being able to share it on a video like this is cool, because you can reach anybody, man, anybody, anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And that's ultimately how one purifies the mind. Like I said, is through the wisdom of other people. And you know, remember that anything and everything that you've done since you were born to this moment, you've done it through the mental thought process and wisdom of someone else. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole concept. You know what I mean? And that's what I like. And it just fits right into recovery. You know what I'm saying? And ultimately, because they, in the rooms of recovery, they tell you, man, you know what I mean? Keep coming back, keep coming to the meetings, and listen to somebody's story, and keep sharing, because you can only have what you can only have by giving away what you have. You know what I'm saying? And if I have something that has helped me get past the trial, the tribulation, and suffering, well, then it's only right for me to share it, because someone else may be in that spot. You know what I'm saying? And maybe they need to hear something like that, because I know that I stood in a recovery room one time and heard somebody's message, and it changed my life. It gave me 10 years of sobriety. You know what I'm saying? So I believe that the power of wisdom is very, 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 very powerful, man. And ultimately, that's how we move forward in this life. You know what I'm saying? There's no way around that. You move forward in your life through someone else's mental thought process, man. And how about doing it with somebody who knew suffering, you know, and knew how to move past it in this spiritual and beautiful way that was connected to a divine energy. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I like doing it. You know what I mean? And hope that I can do the same thing for someone else. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So but anyway, that's all I wanted to share with you guys today, is that for the, you know, talk a little bit about the Four Noble Truths in this thing that, you know, is called Buddhism, and the Buddhism that there's quite a few sects to Buddhism, but the one that I, you know, am really connected to and study the most is the Rishokoshi Kai Buddhist, and it's, you know, based on the Threefold Lotus Sutra, and the Lotus Sutra is what we practice is through the Threefold Lotus Sutra in Japan. It's translated as Nam-myo Renge Kyo, which is the Dharmakyu, and that's the chant that we chant, and it just means that we take refuge in the Threefold Lotus Sutra. You know what I mean? So that's the Nam-myo Renge Kyo, and it's great. You know what I'm saying? It's powerful, and it's just like any other religion, man. You know what I mean? With any other spiritual thing that people do, they have mantras, they have prayers, and it works. You know what I'm saying? It works, and I believe that's how you get a hold of. I believe that, this is just my own personal opinion, is that that's how I believe that you can communicate and have a direct path to that divine energy, is through the chantings, through the prayers, and doing that in a vibrational frequency way, in chanting or singing it. You know what I'm saying? Because ultimately, you know, the Om sound is naturally the sound of the universe. You know what I'm saying? It's where they say that the sound of the universe, you know what I mean, that divine connection, and that's just my belief. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of the things that I believe, and you know, everybody's got their personal opinion, but that's just mine, man. So, but it works for me. You know what I'm saying? So that's a cool thing. But anyway, man, I guess that's gonna be it for today's video, dude. I really appreciate you guys watching. If you would please, at this time, give me a thumbs up, shoot me a comment. You know, hit that subscribe button. Just know that when you do hit that subscribe button, it don't cost you a thing at all. It doesn't cost you a thing, man. But you know what? You'll be helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSDs, childhood traumatic experiences, trauma, depression, drug addiction, alcoholism, suicidal thoughts, all those types of things, my friends, because I have dealt with all those things at one point in time in my life. And guess what, man? I know a way out. And my way out could be your way out. So yeah, just another day, man. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I really appreciate it. So I guess until the next time, when the smoke clears, I am the Recovery Plug.